Let's get started. 2026. I think this is going to be an exciting year. I think this is a year when we've got the technology now. It's gone through that very bumpy testing phase, and we are ready to see what amazing things we can do with it. Years like 2026 are the really exciting years for the vast majority of us who don't work in cutting edge data research. So this is not our first tech trends. I think last year, was pretty easy to predict. Rohan, did you want to go through what we predicted last year?
Yeah, last year was very easy to predict, really. We'd already had this kind of start of a fairly long hype cycle around generative AI, and it was really reaching kind of its boom, especially on a research basis with multiple different large language models reaching the market and reaching user democratization. That's really, it's not subsided, they're still being used, but on the research level, it's slowed down significantly. And now as we're going to cover, we're going to be looking more into industry, market, and application integration of such AI. Edge computing, it's had a small comeback. I think it's still due a bigger comeback, but it was a good prediction. It's something that it's almost a free prediction that over time you can keep predicting it, and there will be cool applications of edge computing. We'll go over one of them towards the end of this webinar. And then legislation around AI, it was a big year for legislation. It was a big year for the first few big pieces of legislation controlling how companies can use AI and how data can be processed. And now we just really need to see how, especially on an international level for multinational companies, how that legislation is actually reinforced and enforced for big and small organizations. But I'm fairly happy with our predictions last year. It was a fairly easy year, but we did get most of the big ones.
So, what are our predictions for this year? A lot more specific this year. You'll notice, which again reflects where we are in the industry. The one we're going to start talking about is the most controversial. AI agentic shopping may or may not take off, but if it does take off, it's going to be huge. Or it could fizzle away and disappear. I think what we're seeing is because of that change to legislation, businesses now are talking so much more about governance at the highest levels, and we'll talk a little bit more about what that means for us as professionals. Healthcare is leading the way with some incredibly exciting work in research and interactive AIs, which have again been on our radar, but I think we're ready now for this year to see them maturing, as in leaving the experimental laboratories and being used by people like you and me, which has led to issues around sovereignty, which we will talk about. I'm going to bundle all of those in together because they kind of go together. Um, and then the big one for many of you, especially our students, is, what's going to happen to my job? And we'll come to that at the end. And then we've got some exciting ones. Space, internet is always worth mentioning when something happens there. And quantum, still 7 years in the future. It's been 7 years in the future for the last 7 years. But there were some really exciting developments last year and some changes in direction, which may be significant this year. Who knows? Those are our honorable mentions. So the big one for me is going to be agentic shopping. To explain what agentic shopping is, think about a scheduler like Calendly, where people sign up, they see your calendar and they sign up and they book an appointment, and it physically makes a change in your digital calendar, and you have no involvement in the process other than setting up the parameters of what you would like those meetings to look like. I'm free on Monday morning. I'm free until 2 p.m. But after that, you back off and you let the AI take over. Um, it's that kind of thing, but for your shopping. So this is where you say, the example we always use is pet food, because we all need to buy it if we have a pet, and it's pretty predictable and it's pretty regular. And so we would say to the AI, Rohan would say Tigger likes this cat food, and this is his frequency of eating it, and please go away and find me the best deal on the market search all the websites, find me the cheapest offer at the moment, order it automatically when you find a really good offer. Now then, I mean, it's potentially revolutionary and really has the potential to change the way we shop. And I think if this one takes off, it's going to be massive. Rohan, would you use this for Tigger's cat food?
Um, yeah, it's an interesting one. I mean, I already use monthly orders of the same cat foods. So on one hand, if AI could find me the best deal of the best cat foods, that would be a massive plus. But on the other hand, it's very hard for me to trust AI to recommend an arbitrary cat food for my cats, of which I know best. So I'm not sure if I'd trust agentic shopping to execute an order that wasn't the cat food I'm already buying. And I'm unsure how I'm really unsure what the benefits for me would be in that specific scenario. In scenarios where I have a bit less certainty, or maybe I'm really looking for the best deal, maybe the most cat food on the market for the cheapest cost, then I could see it being a bit more useful for me.
It's yeah, but the reason why we are making this prediction this year is that the technology has been around for a while. I think where it's more likely to have an influence is use cases like banking. The vast majority of us have our salary sitting in our bank account all month, and we don't spend it all until the end of the month, or we may even have some money left over. And the bank is using that money to generate the income for them. It's a huge income generator. For us, it's just sitting there in a low interest account. And so there are some agentic shopping models that will transfer your money automatically to a better rate. So that and then it will transfer it back when you need the money in your current account, and it's going to be moving between banks. That may take off, but again, security would be my number one concern. Payments going in and out of my account on a regular basis, I don't feel comfortable. Um, the reason why we say this is going to be a big thing is not the technology, it's the law has changed over the last year. So the big companies have been fighting this one out in the law courts throughout 2025, and we're starting to get some conclusions. Amazon obviously has a very strong opinion on this, very, very strong. They've been fighting with OpenAI, Google, Meta over rights to, crawl for best prices, blocking rights, those kinds of things. Perplexity has gone through a big, big legal battle with Amazon. Um, as you can imagine, Amazon want total control of the whole sales process. They're developing their own competitive platforms. Buy for me, Rufus. You'll start seeing those soon. So this is really why we've got it in for this year. The legal barriers have fallen away, and we expect to see it appearing somewhere soon. So that's our first one, agentic shopping. Who knows? Could be really big. I mean, legal issues, governance is a big one. If you're particularly computer science focused, really big year, because we had networks laws, massive network law revisions. DORA has been introduced over operational resilience. We had the EU AI Act. We had acts in the US controlling large language models. It was a massive year for laws, which we knew was coming. And so, of course, for that reason, we now have, when Gartner surveyed chief data officers, I think something like 70% of them said they would prioritize governance over innovation because they understood the impact of, the cost. The bottom line is being massively impacted by this for banks and retailers. That's just the UK. 1.7 billion is a large part of our national economy. It's not something we can ignore. Fines for individual companies. 1.3 billion. There isn't a business on the planet that can ignore that kind of hit. And so that's one of the reasons why people are saying, okay, we want innovation, but actually governance is uppermost. And if you work in our field and your governance is a bit loose and a bit lax, you need to get that sorted this year. Rohan, did you? We also had it. It was a bad year for passwords, especially at the very end of last year. Did you want to talk about this?
Yeah, it's a horrible year for passwords, and pessimistically, it's going to keep getting worse and worse. I think um, just towards the end of last year in November, we had 1.3 billion passwords leaked and the data sets leak. And when hackers get access to your passwords, even if you change them, if you're duplicating your passwords elsewhere or using a certain pattern, maybe a favorite object plus a random number. It gives hackers a huge head start into generating and credential dumping so that they can find your passwords. So this is a really good year and it's a really good start, especially as the new year, maybe as a New Year's resolution, to start thinking about two-factor authentication on all of your accounts, especially on your business accounts, and using hardware security such as passkeys or password managers to start protecting your passwords. As generative AI and RAG gets better and better, we're going to see a lot more attacks, and the passwords gained from attacks and data leaks will be operational for hackers immediately. So you should expect your accounts to be getting lost and be getting stolen very, very fast after leaks happen. And leaks aren't like one-off things that happen maybe a few times a month. They're more so just background noise now. I guarantee you they happen a lot more than you guys actually hear about them. There are probably bigger leaks that are happening that even people who watch the news and watch all of the space hear about them. Some websites are they're reporting a 16 billion login credential leak last year. It's hard to verify whether this actually happened. But for everyone watching, I just strongly recommend moving to two-factor authentication and just considering passwordless options. A passkey is very easy to set up, and password managers are very safe if you link it to a device that you trust.
So we are seeing a little bit of maturing of AI defenders, as we would expect. It's always cat and mouse. So we've got some new innovations in traffic analysis to try and stop the attackers. More automated incident responses means we get quick halts to attacks. You know, it's always this way. So there are, I'm not going to go into that because we're not cybersecurity. There are new innovations coming if you are responsible for the cybersecurity of your organization. Um, but and again, it's cat and mouse. We've got some other changes coming that make you more vulnerable. Rohan, did you want to talk about apps? AI coming to
Yeah,
near you.
apps is a big year for apps. It's a big year, especially for Apple, as they're making huge investment into Siri. They're making a $1 billion per year investment with Gemini, putting Gemini into Siri, and Siri will be able to access all of your personal and voice biometric data. Snapchat is doing the same with Perplexity. They're paying 400 million over 1 year to integrate generative AI into their search features and into the Snapchat application, an application that mainly functions around user photographs. And it's this integration of AI and huge companies with your biometric data, maybe sometimes intimate data, as you see with Tinder testing their new chemistry feature, which allows AI to access your personal photo base to try and optimize your dating profile. That can be seen as very scary. And I'm sure if it's truly not opt-in, because there's a certain level of uncertainty as to whether how opt-in these agreements will be. If it's not very opt-in, not very clearly an opt-in and out, there will be a large level of public backlash and uncertainty around using these apps. Another thing that's we need to really keep an eye on here, because this is something that will happen. There's no skepticism or no uncertainty about whether these agreements will be made. Generative AI will be heavily and heavily more so integrated with personal data and with intimate data and sometimes even biometric data. So we need to keep an eye out of where data is being processed, whether it's being processed on our personal devices, on the cloud, or in third-party infrastructure, and whether those places are meeting legal frameworks, legal requirements, and legislation. But as monetization of AI increases, and it's really brought more so into industries and more so onto the user sides of interfaces. There will be upsides, there'll be convenience upsides for sure. I'm sure some people will make good use of the Tinder chemistry feature. However, it is slightly scary, at least on face value. Um, but it's just another way for the big companies training AI to access more data that they need to essentially scale up their generative AI research.
Mm. Romance scams are so
Yeah.
successful, frighteningly successful. And I look at this list and I just think, oh, that's a lot of highly personal stuff. So if you use any of these apps, look out for an update to improve your services that requires you to tick something. That's where they're sneaking in these new terms and conditions for your data use. You'll be seeing it soon, I'm sure. And they always do it sneakily. That's me being skeptical. Right. So as all, I mean, we talk about cybersecurity all the time, but it's evolving constantly. I want to go to healthcare because it's a great use case of where things are going in terms of interactive AI. Really big thing this year. Really, just like RAG was the big thing last year, interactive AI is coming. It's got lots of applications for research, for you, if any of you work in university research. And then because of this, touching on what Rohan has just said, it's required a new understanding of a thing we're calling this year AI sovereignty, which is, what are you using? Where is it? What's going on? Visibility, transparency. So healthcare, if we think about healthcare, they've been collecting vast repositories of data for decades, since the 1970s. And it's an area that has always been incredibly ready for AI and analytics and data use because the body often follows complex but predictable physical rules. And so this is it kind of makes sense that there is a lot of investment in this area. It also makes sense if you're a student and you're thinking of a sector to work in. The WHO, the World Health Organization, estimate that there are 11 million professionals that needed in health that we don't currently have. We've got a shortage affecting 4.5 billion people, half the population. So it's a very high growth sector coming up in general. Right, let me talk you through this slide. So this is just the catchy, really lovely name, MAIDXO, of Microsoft's, it's called a diagnostic orchestrator. And I think the orchestrator part is the word that tells you what it does. It is incredibly impressive. I mean, I was around when the early healthcare applications were coming out and they would cite numbers like, oh, 85% successful, but when you drill down, it was in reality totally useless. It was just an internal metric. But they have actually tested, they've got better. They've learned their lessons. Healthcare has moved on a lot. And they have tested a range of agents, not just one, but a range of agents against a team of medical professionals with complex health diagnoses, which are, very challenging. And they found that the agents had an 85% accuracy when they followed through and saw what illness actually did present itself and could be treated, compared to 20% by the humans. That is a massive win for the machines. And I think it just reflects the terrific complexity of the number of variables that interact when it comes to healthcare. So it is an orchestrator. Let me explain what that means. You've got one AI that will generate a hypothesis. And when I think about 9 years ago, I was attending talks by the large research publishers like Elsevier and these and Springer, and they were busy tagging their research at word level, carbon, each individual word. And so the data set was ready. This thing can go through all of those research journals going back all, decades and generate hypotheses about what case perhaps is presenting in this sick person. It works a little bit like the GANS model, where you've also got an adversarial model that will say, oh, I don't think that's right. And it's been trained using that technology. There's another AI agent that comes in and selects some tests, a range of tests that to be carried out, like scans, blood tests, those kinds of things, to see whether it is an accurate prescription diagnosis. You've got another one challenging for bias, because we know medical data only became less biased, particularly less sexist. 2018, I think, was the beginning of the change. Shockingly recent. So you've got this range of agents, and they're all interacting with each other to come up with one final diagnosis. And honestly, it appears to be performing terrifically well. This same technology is going to start being applied more and more to things like research. So instead of, one PhD researcher and their laptop, we're going to start seeing a lot more of these machines coming in to, again, generate hypotheses, identify scientific methods to test these hypotheses, control those experiments, and involved at all sorts of different levels. So this is what we mean by interactive AI. One AI is talking to another AI, talking to another one, talking to another one, and eventually we get a better result because each one is highly trained by machine learning to carry out each task. We started talking about this theoretically, I guess, a couple of years ago, and it does appear to be maturing. It's not going to be huge in 2026, but this is the beginning of the beginning, I think, of seeing it coming out. And I think it's exciting. I think diagnosing is hard. It's terrifically difficult to get diagnoses right. But, but as a result of this, you then, sorry, this is a very long section, you then come into issues of, well, you've got this AI that's talking to that AI that's talking to that AI. Where am I in this picture? Where is the expert? Where is the human overseeing things? And so this is where we're going a lot more heavily now into AI sovereignty. AI sovereignty is not the same as ethics, which is a kind of a theoretical, what should we do? It's got a little bit more to do with robust, this is the practice, this is the best practice rules we should follow. And boardrooms have started having these conversations about what agents are we using? Are they all accounted for? Have they gone rogue? Who are they sharing data with? These things can share data with across very long horizons, years. And is the agent working to its job description? Now, you might think, that's not me. I don't do any of those things. I don't need this. You don't have to be working at the research level, cutting edge research level to have a potentially a problem with this. I see this weekly. I attend a lot of meetings, and loads of people use meeting transcriber tools like Otter AI, which is a total data leak, complete data leak. They're using project management tools like Asana, also complete data leak. Email workflow automation systems are really easy to use. Web scammers are really easy to use, but lots of these little tools that you sign up, it takes 2 minutes, you can learn how to use it in 5 minutes. Lots of these tools have the same problems. And so these are the 3 questions we should be asking about all of our use of AI. Do you know all the AIs that you use? Do you understand what data each machine is accessing when when you open it up? Literally, what has it got access to on you? What have you agreed to allow it to access? Hopefully you've got the right protections in place to limit that. But I think, like Rohan, you said about your photos, really
Yeah,
trouble.
it's scary. You need to be able to opt in and you need to be able to verify and audit that the AI you're using or your consumers can opt in and out. I know 10 years ago with machine learning, there was the whole concept and it's continued of black box thinking and how explainable is machine learning at a base level. We're now in that kind of era for AI and generative AI where companies and government and legislation are really looking for auditability of what AI is doing and how can we see what it's doing to make companies accountable for their own agents. And this is going to be a massive thing if agentic shopping and agent really comes into play because if an agent orders a shopping item that the user did not want at all, who's at blame? And without a level of AI sovereignty, it's a really ambiguous question.
Yeah. And in some ways, it's the same conversation we've been having for years. It's visibility, it's transparency, it's accountability. But I think it is helpful to have a new word for it because it's a new set of best practice to follow. And I think it is helpful to have this new word. Right. Why am I so confident that interactive AI is coming? This is the year. Well, I think we've seen, as we saw last year, this trend towards specialized agents. We said this time last year, we're going to move away from ChatGPT writing people's homework, and we're going to start seeing machines trained to do specific tasks, and we've got that now. So we have a lot of specialized agents, and we actually need them to talk to each other. So A2A, agent to agent communications, is going to increase. The main reason why I'm super confident is actually we've got interoperability. So the main players in this field sat down last year to agree standards. And whenever you get standards agreed, it is a catalyst for development in that technology, a super catalyst. And so that's why I'm feeling quite confident that this is the year, this is going to take off and we're going to start seeing these conversations a lot more. You'll have to see next year whether I was right. It could be another edge. We talk about edge all the time. Um, yeah, and I think when we think about what is AI sovereignty, it's kind of like an air traffic control for really complicated workloads that we will start building more. You want to automate input of your emails into your ledger, which then cross-references against bank statements to, in accounts, for example, or in human resources. We're going to have a lot of more complicated interactions going on, and it's just having a human controller in charge of a shared data ecosystem, all the stuff you have access to, and making sure those AI agents are behaving themselves to prevent conflicts, to prevent resource deadlocks, to predefine workflows, prevent bottlenecks. This is really going to be a skill growth coming. So again, if you're interested in future-proof skills, this is a great one to start thinking about. I could do that. That would be good for me. That was a big section, wasn't it? Section, wasn't it? They're all kind of linked. They're all very tightly connected, I think, those trends. And we can see this as well when ChatGPT 6, when we were talking about, well, where is GPT-6 gonna go? Sam Altman, very confidently said it's not, he's going to be focusing on context. And again, it's not like I've been asking ChatGPT for the last hour to talk me through the problem I've had with my girlfriend, and it's been quite consistent and remembering everything I've told it. It's not that kind of context. It's when you've got these incredibly complex logic systems coming together. How does it manage that? And certainly Sam Altman has seen the need for that, and he predicts that's where we're going. So again, it's all kind of coming together in the one time. Rohan, this is the one I think that matters most to particularly our members who are thinking about their jobs, their employability, those kinds of things. Do you want to talk a little bit about where we're going with hiring?
Sure. So this title can seem a bit worrying, especially for graduates who've gotten a degree. First, let me explain this a bit better. A degree is still a signal of baseline capability and persistence of studying and the ability to learn. Degrees will still give you a substantial premium salary in the job market. However, that premium is staying fairly stationary, as now there's so many applicants per job, especially in analysis, that skills evidence are becoming the differentiator for employers. So when we say employers are hiring for skills, not necessarily degree, it means that once you get past the first couple stages of a job application, once your CV is processed and you've had that initial phone call, how you can prove your skills and what certain skills you have that prove workplace readiness, such as soft skills, communications, understanding these concepts that we're talking about now, such as AI sovereignty and regulations that are coming out in the current era of technology become really important. And it's these skills that aren't necessarily strictly taught by academics in universities that are making the big differences with getting your first jobs and transferring between industries into analytics positions. So it's really worth thinking about. And if you haven't explored the IoA website, we have our own portfolio where you can very literally prove your skills aligned to a framework that is industry backed. But you need to think about how you can prove your skills if you're looking for your next job or your next career move. Because there's no point just saying you know this or you have a theoretical knowledge of that or you've built models in your past. It's how can employers trust you and single you out as the 1 in 200 applicant for this entry level analytics position. And that sounds like a tough ask, a 1 in 200 for an entry level position, but that is simply just the nature of the environment with entry level analyst positions right now. There are so many ways to learn analytics, so many entry points, so many even free resources that there are so many people who are applying for these positions. So making sure you are ready to sell yourself, you have a CV, you have an IoA portfolio, your GitHub is active and you have projects on there is essential. And getting confident with communication, with talking in a business sense, with data storytelling, and all those skills that you don't necessarily learn through academic study, but you learn through doing projects and taking part in competitions. These are the skills that really matter and will set you apart.
We have been getting so many questions over this, so many. And I think things have changed so much in such a tiny period of time, literally a question of a year, 2 years, maybe 3 years. And so even your older brother and sister's advice is no longer relevant. When we talk about skills based, it's a case of it's not just I have a degree, this makes me special. It's I have a degree, oh, and I can talk about this, and I can do that, and I can do this. It's that kind of layering of value. Okay, so those are our big predictions, and I think those are the ones we're fairly confident are going to have quite a major impact. Not just they'll be happening in the background, but these are going to be the big topics that me and Rohan will be asked to talk about for the rest of the year. We have a couple of honorable mentions because there are some such exciting things coming that we want to talk about. Probably not that big, but they're very exciting. So quantum, here we go again. Quantum, it has been out of the news actually, I think last year. I think it's safe to say. I didn't really see much talk about it. Quantum computing is two things. It's the hardware, which is very difficult, and it's the software, which is much easier. And actually, businesses are using quantum software on a regular machine to get incredible advantages already. Um, so it hasn't been a headline hitting year for quantum last year, but there were a couple of steady progressions towards a more stable quantum environment, especially from both IBM and Microsoft, had quite a good year. They've been working on getting the qubits to stay a bit more stable. The qubits are like the bits that you would normally have in a computer, but these obviously are way more complex and they've always been very fragile, which is why it's so slow progressing. But they've also been working with optimized software. So this means instead of needing 12 qubits, you need just 9 qubits, or you need just 6 qubits. And when you bring those two together, they've been finding a lot more success. So nothing super exciting this year, last year on quantum. Um, Rohan, are we still 7 years away?
Um, we're at least 5 years away, I think. I think IBM have a roadmap where they're going towards fault-tolerant systems in 2029, but that will focus much more on the cybersecurity aspects, not so much quantum computing as we love for it to exist. In the UK, I think their roadmaps are more so going to 3031, even, sorry, 2031, even 2035. So we're a long way away from actual full-on hardware quantum computing in use cases beyond security. I think for 2026, there will be use cases, especially maybe within crypto or within blockchain, where quantum can be used specifically for security and cybersecurity and encryption. However, for the big, exciting quantum computing, I think is not yet a story that we can predict for the near future.
So a long time ago, I was involved in a project which collected sensor data from roads. I don't know what it looks like where you live, but here in the UK, we actually have sensors underneath roads at traffic lights at most junctions. It's very, very common. And when I say most junctions, I mean pretty much every road in the country, apart from the countryside, where it's cows, and things like that. And just how do you decide if you can imagine the number of data points coming in every second from every single junction of every single road in the UK? And there's this big question about we can't possibly process that. We have to sample it. It's just that size of data set is just too big, way too big. And the real-time processing is way too big. How do we deal with that? And so that for me, because I'm a geek, that was a really interesting dilemma. We've got the same one with climate data. We've got the same dilemma. So we have masses of satellites that literally just act as cameras or microphones or something like that. And they've been collecting all these images or data points on a similar massive scale. And it's just too much to then downlink to whoever's controlling it in who's ever sitting in, I don't know, the UN, I like to think, analyzing this. And so we've actually got the beginning of satellite first AI. There are satellites out in space now that have a processor that will allow them to do the initial analysis of that data. And instead of sending all those many trillions of data points back from space to Earth, they've been sending, top level summaries and the analytic figures that we need. And so this is a satellite first AI. Super exciting. And I think we're going to start seeing more of these satellites going up to do more kinds of tasks. It makes sense with climate modeling, which is so vastly complex and challenging. Um, yeah, but your data's in space officially. Martin Rohan, are you are you a space internet fan like I am?
Yeah, so I was actually reading up on this, and it is very exciting. It is still there are some constraints that do keep it grounded. That you don't get very good bandwidth in space. You can be Tesla, you can be Elon Musk. You're not going to get the greatest internet signal in space. So
Oh
there
yeah.
is currently, with our current technology, a small limit on how much analysis can be done in a space of time. If we get better bandwidth, if we can get better latency, it is a really exciting as prospect, especially for maybe disaster response and for monitoring global warming and different weather systems in general. On the flip side, it could be a fairly scary prospect if we were to enter wartime, having data being processed by satellites in space in a fairly fast amount of time could give some pretty scary competitive advantages. But for now, in peacetime, for most of the world at least, it's a fairly exciting prospect.
I can't get Wi-Fi in my kitchen sometimes.
Yeah.
Thank you for watching. The Institute of Analytics is the global membership body for data professionals. Learn more by following us on LinkedIn, Facebook or Instagram, or visit our website now. The links are in the description.